What's up, Star Wars fans? We're the Hilsmaniacs, and today we're going to talk about all the cameos and appearances in Chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett. So if you haven't watched Chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett, just a fair warning, there are spoilers for Chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, a lot.
Or as we should call it, Chapter 6 of the Mandalorian, because this, again, you know, a series about Boba Fett had literally less than 5 minutes of Boba Fett.
Of actual Boba Fett.
In this movie, or in this episode.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, even last week we talked about, like, if that episode was even worth watching, because episode 5 of the Book of Boba Fett was literally an episode of The Mandalorian. And now this one pretty much picks up the same way. You know, you got Mando. Right. Mando's going to find Grogu, and he finds him. And
Luke and Ahsoka.
And this is where, like, some of the cameos and appearances come in.
Yes.
He runs into R2-D2, which that was awesome, who leads him to Ahsoka. And then it keeps showing Luke, like, training Grogu throughout the episode.
Again, I didn't mind this episode. It's just in the wrong series, I feel. This could have been something for the Ahsoka series.
Yeah, really.
For all I care.
Yeah,
like,
something like that.
Even if you're putting this in Season 3 of The Mandalorian, you know, you could have even had it for the Ahsoka series. It would have made sense, you know. But they showed what Mando made for Grogu. And then after his little pit stop to see Grogu, he then goes back to Tatooine to help Boba Fett against the Pikes and whoever their leader is, which is revealed to be freaking Cad Bane of all people. Like, everybody thought that the big bad of this series was going to end up being like Crimson Dawn from
I didn't think there was going to be a big bad of this series.
Because, you know, she said you would have to get permission to kill the Hutts, so we were like, well, who would he need permission from? And Cad Bane shows up and kills Cobb Vanth, who was the ruler of Freetown, as they're calling it now, which was Mos Pelgo.
Yeah.
We saw him in The Mandalorian. He had Boba Fett's armor after he came out of the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, so that's another appearance and a return.
So you had Timothy Oliphant's character come back. I didn't mind all these cameos, and I didn't mind the episode. It's just, for it being about Boba Fett, this episode in the series had very little Boba Fett.
Yeah, he had, like, I think there was literally, like, 2 minutes of him, like, talking or something.
And he didn't even say anything.
It was mostly just...
It was Fennec Shand.
Yeah, Fennec Shand giving a big speech, all the people they brought together.
He's just standing around the table.
In Boba's little
group. He's just there.
I don't know. I said this last week as well. I feel like they gave up on the Book of Boba Fett, and they're just like, let's just bring them back to The Mandalorian, because that's the show they liked anyways.
Side character.
Yeah, this show is literally all the side characters from The Mandalorian. That's like what this is. Like, hey, let's look at the lives of these side characters. Yeah. I don't mean to, like, make it seem like Boba Fett's not a big deal in the Star Wars lore and everything, but in this show, it just doesn't... If he's just making a cameo in his own show, essentially, then that's where you've lost the point of it, I think. And that's exactly what happened here, because they focused too much on Luke training Grogu. Like, that could have been saved for The Mandalorian, and Ahsoka's there with Luke. So it showed that was maybe 20 minutes of the whole episode, and it was a 57-minute episode or something around those. It
showed Cobb Vanth earlier on, like, he had a run-in with some of the Pikes
and stuff. Yeah, so it was like the way they did all these cameos and appearances and everything just took away from Boba Fett yet again. So they're just trying to, like, forget about what Boba Fett's doing. Let's just drive us back into the Mandalorian again.
The sad part is that Boba Fett's just going to end up being basically a sidekick to Mando.
That's what I said. So
in The Mandalorian Season 3. And it is rumored that Cad Bane is supposed to be the big bad, I guess, or the main villain of The Mandalorian season 3. So I guess this whole introduction here with him running the Pike Syndicate will play into the Mandalorian season 3.
There's that, and also what I want to see from this is basically, I wish they would have just made a series about just Grogu training to be a Jedi. I'd rather see that, him and Luke interacting, and Ahsoka's there on whatever island they're on, or planet, or whatever, with R2 and all them that it showed. I want to see that now. I mean, I don't really care much about Boba Fett anymore at this point.
You know, they did say they were going to build this school with Grogu being its first student. He's going to be the first student, which, I think this is what ends up leading to Kylo Ren, and then that whole story. Jedi, and one of those people, because it said Kylo Ren like killed all the other students and stuff, and one of those students that Kylo Ren could kill could be Grogu unless something else happens first.
No, don't kill Grogu.
But basically, Luke gave Grogu a choice. You know, he chooses the chainmail suit that Mando gave him, or he gets Yoda's lightsaber, and
which Grogu would be really cool.
Which they'll pick up with in season 3 of The Mandalorian. So of course, because you're not going to answer that question in season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett, I don't even think they're going to have a season 2.
It makes no sense.
You didn't need to introduce these characters to build up for the Book of Boba Fett. You could have just, or to build up for Mando season 3. You could have just had them be with Mando, in The Mandalorian season 3, and they're going after the Pike Syndicate for some other reason, and just build it up like that. You didn't have to use this entire series to set up another series.
It makes no... It's not even... They shouldn't have even called it the Book of Boba Fett at this point, then.
They should have called it the Book of Fennec Shand.
I think the Book of Boba Fett should have ended after they ended the flashbacks.
Flashback.
Yeah, so like episode 3 or whatever it was. And then this is a whole new series just showing what everybody else is doing or something. Right. And then you bring back Mando for his series, and Ahsoka's there, and Luke, and Grogu, and all them. That's all this did.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense to be part of a series called the Book of Boba Fett with very little from Boba Fett in it at this point.
I mean, the series started off fine.
Yeah, it was fine.
It had Boba Fett, it had the flashbacks, and then Chrysanthemum's just with them now. Like, he never really agreed to be part of Boba Fett's army. He's just here now.
It feels like we missed something.
I do want to see the Chrysanthemum versus Cad Bane battle if we end up getting that.
I want Chrysanthemum versus
cool.
Chewbacca.
I love seeing Cad Bane in live action too. That was kind of cool. Like when we first saw him walking up to Mos Pelgo, I was like, "Who is this?" I was like, "Is it like Fennec Shand?
As soon as I saw the hat, I'm like,
and then I saw the hat, and I'm like, really?
Cowboy hat up in there.
Cad Bane, and then and it's live action. It's the first time other than Ahsoka, I think this is the first time we saw a Clone Wars character in live action. So we haven't really seen anybody else. Well, I guess Bosk too in Empire Strikes Back, because he was in the Clone Wars, but
in like in these series and stuff.
Main people. So that's kind of cool to see. So I'm okay with the setup. I just wish they wouldn't have focused on the Grogu stuff.
Yeah, and especially if you think about like if there's people that are watching The Mandalorian but didn't really care to watch the Book of Boba Fett or whatever. They're just waiting for season 3 of The Mandalorian. You come into season 3 of The Mandalorian, all this stuff's going on. Like, when did that happen?
Yeah.
Why isn't Mando a Mandalorian anymore? And all that stuff.
Who's this blue guy that they're chasing?
What's going on with Grogu? It's like all that is being built up. They're using that to make you have to go back and watch the Book of Boba Fett, which shouldn't be the case. We didn't watch all the Star Wars movies to then set up for The Mandalorian. Right. We watched all the Star Wars movies, and then you watch The Mandalorian to see how it ties into everything. It's just like, I feel like they're completely shifting this and just using this show as a bouncing off point for The Mandalorian season 3, instead of just focusing on it as its own series, about its own character, with its own, that's still in that same, because it's all in the Star Wars universe, but I mean, still in the same little universe that they're creating in these series and stuff. It's still connected to The Mandalorian. Just don't have all that stuff until the last episode.
Now, the Cad Bane stuff, they could have kept in the Book of Boba Fett. Just had it be different. Like, you go from the part where Cobb Vanth kills the Pikes at the beginning. Then have something with Boba Fett, like where he's fighting against some Pikes or something.
And runs into Cobb Vanth.
And then somebody else shows up, because you really didn't need Mando to talk to Cobb Vanth. I mean, I guess it was that kind of friendship.
Because Mando knew who he was, but like.
But still, you could have had Boba Fett go as one leader to another and be like, hey, you know, we're outnumbered here. Do you want to help me? And then when he leaves, Cad Bane show up.
I think that would have been I think that would have been a more interesting, like, also the dynamic between the two of them, because, like, hey, you have the armor that was Cobb Vanth's armor for a while until Mando got it back, and then ended up giving it to Boba Fett. You know, so it was like you could have had that kind of thing there, like, hey, I want that armor back, you know, or whatever, and maybe they fight each other before they realize they're fighting the same war or whatever.
Well, and it seems like
weird.
It seems like Cad Bane knows a lot more than he should. Also, like, he knew about the armor that Cobb Vanth had that belongs to Boba Fett,
and that whole section was fine, because that still ties into Boba Fett.
Right,
because he even mentions Boba Fett.
They could have had that.
He said Boba Fett was a cold-blooded killer that worked with the Empire and stuff. So he was trying to get Cobb Vanth on his side. Instead, he said, "I'll double whatever Boba Fett is paying you," and things like that.
Cad Bane's not wrong.
Well, Cad Bane kind of worked.
Yeah. He was a bounty hunter too.
He worked for whoever, I guess.
He kind of at the end.
I don't know. It's just the way they're doing this show now. It just makes no sense. And then next week, for the final episode or something, it's going to be this epic battle scene or whatever. It's going to have all these people.
Which should take place in The Mandalorian, but will end up happening.
It's Boba Fett's leading it, and then they're all fighting for Tatooine. It's like, what really does Mando care about Tatooine, honestly?
Well, he's helping Boba Fett.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
As a favor.
So, and yet somehow Boba Fett still feels like the side character.
So anyways, guys, there you go. That was our thoughts on the cameos in Chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett, and our thoughts on the episode itself. If you haven't watched it, you can probably stop watching it after the last episode.
I don't know. I mean,
because unless you're watching The Mandalorian, in which case you should probably watch it.
You need these for The Mandalorian, but not necessarily for the Book of Boba Fett.
So there you go. Check out the show if you haven't, because it was a good show up until this point. And there's nothing wrong with this stuff, just don't be in this series. So there you go, guys. Leave a comment on what you guys thought of this episode of the Book of Boba Fett, and what you guys thought of the cameos that they had in this, and where this might lead to in future series on Disney Plus. Stay tuned for what else we got going on, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
And may the Force be with you.
Bye, guys.
Subscribe.